And just as you take care of your body in extreme temperatures, railroads have to watch out for overheating too. Railways lay tracks at something called the neutral temperature, representing the middle temperatures of the local environment. For instance, the neutral temperature is lower in Alaska than in Florida. In each case, the steel rails can tolerate both chilly winter nights and sweltering summer afternoons. But steel, just like your own body, doesn't like extreme weather. When tracks endure excessive heat, the steel expands. Eventually, the stress of this expansion can cause the tracks to buckle or suddenly bend to the side. In locomotive lingo, this is called a sun kink. Some sun kinks are gentle curves only a few feet long, but others might be very sharp and stretch for yards. From an aerial view, it can look as if a giant reached down and bent the once straight rails into a capital S or a squiggly line. Unfortunately, these can cause trains to derail. To prevent derailments, railroad workers perform heat patrols where they walk the tracks and keep an eye out for sun kinks. If necessary, they may try to reduce the stress in rails by cutting out a section to prevent them from buckling. If a sun kink does occur, the workers cut out the bent track and put it back in the proper position, or lay new rails as replacements.
Hey, Yael, do you think this hat makes my head look funny?
No.
Did you just say no in French? Is that because my hat looks kind of like a beret or for some other reason?
Well, Don, because it might be easier to lie in a foreign language. A little background first. According to the cognitive load hypothesis, lying should be harder in a foreign language because both lying and speaking in a foreign language makes your brain work harder. But according to the emotional distance hypothesis, lying should be easier in a foreign language because speaking in a foreign language is less emotionally arousing than speaking in your native tongue. So the stress you feel while lying gets dampened. To see which hypothesis won out, psychologists had participants lie or tell the truth while answering questions. They found that participants generally took longer to lie than to tell the truth, but that the time difference shrank when the participant was speaking in a foreign language. That's because it took participants longer to tell the truth in a foreign language, not because participants could lie faster. The researchers think they can explain their results using both hypotheses. People took longer to tell the truth in a foreign language because the extra cognitive load of speaking a different language made it harder. Lying should have taken even longer because it makes the brain work even harder. But the emotional distance that speaking in a foreign language creates canceled out some or all of that extra cognitive load. In Central East Africa, there lives a small, slow-growing, scruffy tree that residents call mpingo, from the Swahili for the ebony tree. Mpingo is true to its namesake, with wood that ranges from reddish to pure black. Mpingo wood gains remarkable stability from the layer of sapwood that divides its bark from its inner hardwood. Its hardiness has been a factor in both the tree's success and its endangerment. For the last 100 years or so, mpingo wood has been the primary material used to make clarinets and other small woodwind instruments in many commercial markets. But mpingo trees take 75 to 100 years to reach harvestable size, and rates of harvest have far outstripped the tree's slow growth. One 2009 study found that poor conservation had left these grassland trees with low germination rates that result in decreased biodiversity. The trees need gene diversity to keep their populations productive. It's important to point out that this blackwood variety of African rosewood came to popularity after the Central American ebony cocos wood was depleted in the 1900s. It had been the staple for woodwind instrument manufacturing up to that point. But in Tanzania, where mpingo is the national tree, conservation helps to keep it from being threatened. One effort, called Clarinets for Conservation, uses music education to inform young Tanzanians about the importance of their national tree and how to get involved in protecting natural resources. Also, Farmers plant imbingo in lowlands where the tree can easily withstand grass fires that other plants often cannot. Their efforts help the tree of music to continue to thrive.
A bird strike is an event that involves a collision between a bird and a man-made vehicle, typically an aircraft, while it is in operation. The term bird strike is often expanded to cover other wildlife strikes, such as those involving bats. In theory, bird strikes can occur during any phase of flight, but they are most likely to occur during the takeoff, initial ascent, approach, and landing phases of the flight. It's relatively uncommon for bird collisions to occur when an airplane is cruising at high altitudes, as birds usually fly at lower levels. Furthermore, more than half of such incidents occur during daylight hours, as birds typically fly during the day. Bird strikes are not as uncommon as one might think. More than 194,000 cases of wildlife strikes were reported from 1990 to 2017 within the U.S. alone. From 1988 to 2017, a total of 263 civilian aircraft were either destroyed or damaged beyond repair due to wildlife strikes around the world. The nature of aircraft damage from bird strikes depends on the size of the airplane in question. Smaller airplanes most likely experience structural damage, such as the penetration of flight deck windscreens or damage to control surfaces. In some cases, especially with choppers and fixed-wing aircraft, windscreen penetration may potentially injure pilots or other people on board, which may lead to a loss of control of the aircraft, which could have disastrous consequences. On the other hand, a large aircraft powered by jet engines usually experience engine malfunction or, in the very worst case, complete engine failure when birds fly into them.
The Moon is the fifth largest natural satellite in the solar system, with a diameter just under the width of China. It's composed of an iron-rich core, plus a mantle and crust containing minerals made of magnesium, oxygen, and silicon. The Moon's surface was once geologically active and covered in an ocean of magma. But today, apart from traces of water ice, the surface is completely covered in dust and rocky debris. Countless craters dot the Moon's surface, each formed by objects such as meteoroids, comets, and asteroids crashing onto the Moon. The largest crater, the South Pole Aitken Basin, spans across a quarter of the Moon's surface and is nearly deep enough to fit Mount Everest inside. The Moon orbits our planet at an average distance of 30 Earths. It rotates at the same rate that it revolves. So as it revolves around our planet, the same side of the Moon faces the Earth at all times. From the Earth's surface, we can observe 8 distinct traditionally recognized stages of the Moon's illumination. Called lunar phases, they have been observed for thousands of years and even provided the basis for the earliest calendars.